Hey everybody, it's your captain speaking hot here. Let's face it, most passengers are pretty nervous the first time they set foot in a small aircraft. It's a whole different experience than flying in a jumbo jet with 100 other people. But you know what? That's understandable. Taking to the skies in a smaller plane is a unique adventure, and it's our job as pilots to make sure everyone feels comfortable and confident up there with us. So in this video, I'm going to share 9 tips that I've learned over the years to help calm those nerves and turn even the most anxious first-timer into a seasoned co-pilot. These tips are all about building trust, sharing knowledge, and making sure everyone on board feels like they're part of the journey. Here's how you can make them more comfortable and keep them coming back for more flights. Before we even think about taking off, I always make it a point to bring my passengers in on the pre-flight planning. We're not just talking about glancing at the weather app here, people. I'm talking about breaking out the aviation charts, looking at the radar, and explaining exactly what we might encounter up there. And hey, I even show them how to decipher those meter reports. You know, those cryptic codes that pilots use to talk about the weather. It's like learning a secret language, but it makes them feel like they're in the loop. And you know what else is super important? The flight plan. This isn't just about drawing a line on a map and hoping for the best. I'm talking about plotting our course, identifying landmarks along the way, and explaining how we use those landmarks for navigation. It's like a scavenger hunt in the sky. And believe me, it helps calm those nerves when your passengers can actually see what you're talking about. Okay, so we've got the weather figured out, the flight plan is filed, but we're not done yet. It's time to head out to the airplane for the pre-flight inspection, and guess what? My passengers are coming along for the ride. This isn't just about me walking around the plane, kicking the tires and hoping for the best. No way! I'm talking about a thorough step-by-step inspection, and I explain every single thing I'm doing to my passengers. We're talking checking the fuel for contaminants, inspecting the control surfaces for any wear and tear, examining those wings and the tail, the whole 9 yards. And you know what the best part is? I encourage questions. The more questions they ask, the more comfortable and confident they feel. It's all about transparency, folks. Alright, so we're strapped in, the engine is purring, and we're ready to taxi. But before we get too far down the runway, I want to have a little chat with my passengers about cockpit communication. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good conversation as much as the next person, but there are times when I need my passengers to be extra attentive and quiet. I explain that during critical phases of flight, like takeoff and landing, it's super important to minimize distractions. I need to be laser-focused on flying the airplane, and any extra chatter can be, well, distracting. But hey, once we're cruising at a comfortable altitude, feel free to chat amongst yourselves, ask questions, or just enjoy the view. It's all about finding that balance, right? Now here's a fun one. Once we're up in the air, cruising along, and everyone is feeling a little more relaxed, I like to offer my passengers a chance to, well, feel the airplane. Now don't worry, I'm not talking about doing any barrel rolls or loop-the-loops here. We're keeping it nice and easy. I'll ask if they'd like to try some shallow turns. With my hand on the controls the whole time, of course, I let them gently bank the airplane left or right. It's amazing how even the slightest movement translates into a change in direction. It gives them a real sense of the airplane's responsiveness and stability, and it helps them understand that we're not just hurtling through the air hoping for the best. Plus, it's just plain fun. Okay, this next tip is especially cool for night flights. You see, at smaller airports they don't always have those fancy radar systems that automatically turn on the runway lights when an airplane is approaching. So guess what? We get to do it ourselves. I'll tune the radio to the common traffic advisory frequency for the airport and hand the microphone to my passenger. Then, I'll explain that by clicking the microphone a certain number of times, we can actually turn on the runway lights. It's like having a superpower, and it never fails to elicit a sense of wonder and excitement. Plus, it's a great way to illustrate how pilots communicate and interact with ground facilities. Alright, let's talk about creature comforts for a minute. When you're up in the air, even for a short flight, it's important to stay hydrated and keep those energy levels up. That's why I always make sure to bring along extra water and a few snacks. I mean, nobody wants a hangry co-pilot, right? But before we even get to that point, I always give my passengers a friendly reminder to use the restroom before we take off. Unlike those fancy airliners, we don't have the luxury of onboard lavatories in most small aircraft, so a pre-flight pit stop is always a good idea. You know what makes a flight even more enjoyable? Music. But we're not just talking about any old music here. I'm talking about letting my passengers curate their own in-flight playlist. I'll show them how to pair their phones or music players to my Bluetooth headset like the Bose A20 and voila, they've got their own personal concert in the sky. It's amazing how a little music can transform the entire flight experience. Whether it's their favorite band, a relaxing playlist, or even an audiobook, it helps them feel more at ease and turns the journey into a truly personalized adventure. Now this next tip might seem obvious, but trust me, it makes a world of difference. As a pilot, I'm acutely aware that my demeanor sets the tone for the entire flight. If I'm calm, cool, and collected, my passengers are more likely to feel the same way. So, even if we encounter a little turbulence or things get a bit bumpy, I make it a point to stay relaxed and reassure my passengers that everything is under control. Last but not least, I always try to put myself in my passengers' shoes. I remember my first time in a small aircraft and how every unfamiliar sound or movement made me a little uneasy. So, whenever possible, I explain those sounds and movements to my passengers. Whether it's the whirring of the flaps during takeoff or the gentle bump of the wheels touching down on the runway, a little explanation goes a long way in alleviating anxiety and ensuring a smooth, enjoyable flight. So there you have it, my 9 tips for calming nervous flyers in small aircraft. Remember, it's all about building trust, sharing knowledge, and making everyone feel like they're part of the experience. And you know what? When you create that kind of atmosphere, flying in a small aircraft transforms from a nerve-wracking experience into an unforgettable adventure. What else can make your passengers more comfortable? Tell us in the comments below.